Good afternoon. This is the November 25th meeting of the Board of County Commissioners of Pickens County, and I'm sitting in as the chair today since Rob Ettner, our chair, is out of town on family business. This is our work session, and the first item, we have Kurt Dahl here to talk about an EPA Clean Power Rulemaking letter.
Thank you. Kurt Dahl, Pickens County Environmental Health Manager. I am here today to seek the board's approval and support for a letter supporting the EPA Clean Power Plan. This plan was rolled out last June, and comments are now due December 1st for the final rulemaking. The Clean Power Plan is looking at reducing carbon dioxide emissions out of power plants with a national average of about 30%. Each state has an individual target, but the overall goal for the country is 30%. The plan itself outlines 4 different areas or blocks where they are looking to create efficiencies and thus reduce emissions. 2 of those blocks really are intended for the power plants themselves in reducing emissions at the source. The one, if you're familiar with this plan, that's discussed the most is converting from coal to natural gas, burning natural gas, which is cleaner. The other 2 blocks are then looking at the addition of using renewable sources in place of other carbon-producing sources. And then the last one is actually looking at creating efficiencies at the end-user level, the overall goal being to reduce carbon emissions. The obvious benefits for climate change, the other one is for health. When you reduce the carbon dioxide emissions, you're also going to get reductions in other gases as well, like sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, particulate matter, pieces like that. So there's a health benefit as well. One of the important pieces, I think, of this is each state's actually responsible for determining how they're going to achieve this goals that are set out by the EPA. So this is something that, even in supporting, what will happen is the state health department, who's in charge of dealing with air quality in the state, will then come back and actually address how we're going to, as a state, do this, and we'll be able to be part of that decision making as well with the state health department. Greenhouse gas, I think it's a letter that's important. I think it's something that it's been, been a long time coming. When you look at power plants, they are the single largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the country. So this is a pretty significant step forward. I don't think it's the only step, but I certainly think it's a step that, I'm glad to see we're finally trying to take. So with that, I'll entertain, if you guys have questions for me.
George?
On the letter, let's see, 1, 2, the 3rd paragraph where you say the county does have one concern, the plan encourages the replacement of coal with natural gas.
Yes.
I would suggest we rework that sentence to look at encouraging the replacement of coal with renewables and natural gas.
Okay.
I think that's really the direction the state needs to go in with utilizing solar and wind, and we've seen how successful that could be here. And even though, as you say, natural gas is a cleaner burning fuel than coal, it still actually can emit as much or more methane unless we're able to utilize the methane to capture that as an energy source, which the ski company has shown that could be done as well. So I think we need to look at sort of a broad plate of options, and certainly renewables should play a large part in it.
Okay.
Steve? Yeah, I would agree with that strongly, and it might just be worth listing what we've just seen in the papers recently, that the emissions in Weld County in the Front Range are 7 times higher than the state's estimates have been for those types of gases. and that it's creating that type of low-lying ozone problem on the Front Range.
Right.
And so there's some new information on that. So I think that it is worth mentioning, because it's a cleaner burning fuel, but it has impacts both on the land as
Right.
well, and that fracking is disruptive to individual homeowners and to public lands as well.
Okay.
So, it's just worth mentioning that it's just not the silver bullet, and that there are concerns with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I would concur with that. Zane Kessler from the Thompson Divide Coalition told me one time that he thought that natural gas overall is just as dirty as coal when you take into account all the hundreds of truck trips that are required to drill a well and all the pipe that has to be manufactured and put into the ground for it, and all the leaks of the methane gas. All those different things add up to, he thinks, as large of a carbon footprint as the burning of coal has. So definitely it burns cleaner when at the final
Right.
final use of it, but there are a lot of other things that come before. So I concur with that. We need to work towards going towards renewables.
Right. Okay.
Kurt, I have a question about what are the Colorado standards that have been set and how do they compare to other states?
So in February, the state health department, Air Quality Division, adopted new regulations, mostly affecting the oil and gas industry, requiring leak detection, requiring, you put me on the spot with that. There's a pretty big rulemaking that involved the fugitive emissions and detection of it, fixing of the leaks, and at the time, and my understanding right now, still is probably the most advanced in the country. Mm-hmm. So in terms of being aggressive and ensuring that we're detecting leaks, we're getting them fixed in a proper amount of time. So there are a lot of states that don't have that, which was the concern when I looked at that. If we're going to encourage that piece, then I think we need to make sure that we're in a place where all the other states, or at least caught up to what we're doing with leak detection and fixing, repair.
Yeah.
John, do you have any idea what our portfolio looks like in terms of energy use? How much energy we derive from coal versus other sources?
On a statewide basis?
No,
or
county.
County?
It'd be Holy Cross for the most
You
part.
know, I think we had some of that information when we did our energy contracting study a few years back. I can't recall it off the top of my head, but we can certainly go back. Phyllis, do you recall if that? I know we had the energy usage. I'm not clear on whether we had sources broken down. Now, much of our electricity is derived from Holy Cross, and so we could look at their portfolio. I know they've been they, like many other all other utility providers in Colorado, have a minimum goal for renewables. What I don't know is what their fossil fuel mix would be, but we can certainly see if we can find that
Yeah,
out.
I'm just curious. I know I've had this conversation with Cindy Hubin and Mona Newton about trying to get a goal for the county, similar to what the city of Aspen is doing through the Canary Initiative. And we really never have we have sort of these lofty ideas, and we've implemented them in different ways through our building codes and supporting the Clean Air, Clean Water Act, but we've never really established sort of a baseline goal for the county to move towards a renewable energy source. So I think it'd be something interesting to follow up, similar to the conversation I mentioned last week in terms of looking at opportunities investing in the clean energy collective, the solar farms.
All of our downtown facilities are through the city of
Through the city.
Aspen.
Yeah.
So it's the airport, at the out-of-town facilities that use Holy Cross. So
Right, and that's where,
we'd have a breakdown of how much we get from each provider from that past study.
Rachel?
And I think George may be talking about the larger goal as a county as opposed to the county as a business and our, the county residents, the county community? Or are you just talking about us as a one
I was
agency?
really just focusing on
As an
the
organization.
county initially, because I think as a leader in the community, we could
Okay.
set some goals and try to find the pathways that then we can then bring in the rest of the community.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, because I know that when you reference the City and the Canary Initiative, they're interested in upping their renewables with all their citizens, their business. They do a lot of energy efficiency with individuals as opposed to just the city.
But of course, they're different because they're the provider, they're the utility provider, where we don't have that.
Well, they are for electricity, but they're not for natural gas.
Yeah.
So, but they have set more of a citywide goal for city residents that they're
Yeah.
working towards. And so I think that's a larger discussion. I'd like to get into it. I think I agree with you entirely. It's just you get to, we haven't had an energy manager position filled specifically for that purpose for a long time. And it might be something to talk about, the strategic plan at the retreat.
I failed to point out one thing that I feel I wanted to, or it was important. I want to thank the Canary Initiative, actually, Ashley and Chris, because they helped tremendously with me putting this letter together. And the letter itself is based off of their testimony that they gave when the EPA rolled out the plan back on June 2nd. They submitted a testimony letter. So this letter actually is based off of that, and I talked with Chris and Ashley about using some of that because they worded some things very well, and I thought it was done really well. I wanted to give them credit for that.
Yeah.
Well, I was thinking of the impact on the quality of our air here, and the Cameo coal plant already is shut down and gone. The whole thing has disappeared, and I'm sure that must have had an impact on our quality of air here, having an upwind coal plant not there anymore. But do you think that these new rules will have any other impact on our air quality here? Or potentially have?
Potentially, that's a good question. Certainly, some of the health benefits. No, I think the city, again, I haven't looked at it. I know that their Canary Initiative was modeling some of the air and looking at where the air shed came from, and I haven't had a chance to look at that. I think, we might have some minimal impacts. I doubt for us it would be large, but I couldn't answer that absolutely. I probably need to look at that a little more.
But the impact would be a national impact with a projected, the target of a 30% reduction
Absolutely.
in those emissions. And so it may be difficult to model the exact impact on this discrete area versus the national impact. And I think this is a letter in support of the national impact, which we think overall would have a benefit.
Just to build off of that, actually, it's not just national. This proposed plan probably contributed to our agreement, if you saw, with China on air emissions as well. So it's a bargaining piece as well that, hey, we're doing something now, everybody else needs to follow suit as well. So I think it actually even has some larger impacts than that.
Rachel?
Yeah, this is for the board's consideration, but I'm wondering whether we might want to add a paragraph, a short one, that is along the lines of that, we are aware of and sympathetic to the concerns of coal-producing counties and would hope that the federal government would provide the means to assist to their transition to a different economy. But we know that Routt County and Delta and Rio Blanco and Moffett, a number of those are very heavily reliant on coal, and some are coal and gas, so they're not quite as worried. But I think that assistance to transitioning communities that will be affected by this rulemaking should be included in the plan. Is that okay with the other board members?
No, I think it's good, but I would also include, or at least reemphasize, as to allow these counties some resources for the transition from coal to, again, natural gas and renewables.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
To the extent possible. But
One other thing we could consider putting in would be a reference to the methane capture project over in Somerset, which is being used for generating a whole lot of electricity, and it's also preventing a bunch of methane from escaping into the atmosphere. And that could be a way that many coal-producing areas that have, I mean, some of them don't have a lot of methane gas in the coal. Some are gassy, some are not gassy, but for a lot of areas that could be a way they could achieve their standards and still be able to keep the coal mine operation going to some extent. So we might want to include something
I
like
think
that.
that gets a little too technical for me, Steve, because some can, some can't. Do they have to keep mining and selling coal to keep the methane coming out? I don't know. You know, I just think it's just to tell them to please work on this transition and let them come up with 1,000 different ways to help them.
Yeah, and I guess you're right, Rachel. If we
It alludes to saying keep digging the coal so that we can get the methane off it for
we
methane
let
capture.
people's imagination work all across the country. They all have different situations and
Right.
Yeah.
probably can come up with different solutions. That would be one we came up with locally, but
Yeah,
Right.
okay,
yeah, I think it might confuse our bigger message.
okay.
Okay,
Okay.
So,
thanks, I'm really glad we're weighing in, because I know those other counties are weighing in the other way around.
yeah.
Yeah.
And other groups like Club 20. and-
Everybody's okay with Kurt making the modifications to the letter and then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that on deadline,
There's a deadline December 1st.
December 1st?
So I probably will literally go back, change this, get this back to Jeanette, I believe, or Susan.
And then we'll get the chair's signature. Should probably prepare it for Steve's signature.
Okay.
Because we're not sure when Rob will be back.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
So I'll prepare it. Okay,
Great.
Okay,
Thank
thanks,
you.
Kurt.
thank you.
Thanks, Fred.
Okay, next on our agenda is future agendas.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Coming to the end of the year and filling up our time, I do want to talk to you a little bit about next week's agenda. We potentially have some challenges. You know, as you all are aware, Commissioner Intner had to leave on family business. We do not know yet when he'll be back. That could be the best case scenario that he told me was Friday, and he very well may be out next week. Our challenge then is we also have Rachel and Steve out, and so we have a quorum issue. That is particularly a problem because we have a deadline for adopting our budget of December 15th, and that is a two-read item. So one of the things I just wanted us to do some contingency thinking
Planning,
around.
yeah.
I did talk to the attorney's office. It is at the board's discretion for board members to attend electronically the meeting. We could create a quorum by setting up either a Skype or a conference call for the purpose of considering the items on the agenda. The third would obviously be the most important agenda to attend versus the work session.
Okay, gotcha, there we go. So we're
And
doing
what
the
that
third.
would do is it would provide some flexibility for us if Steve and Rachel, you're open to trying to work on that, just to see if Rob is back, and also if you wanted to weigh in, because there are a few more items that I'll be talking to you about in open discussion on this agenda. I think you're more or less familiar with most of them, but I just want to go over them with you in open discussion, so you're aware of what's coming up on that agenda. But the bigger concern right now is ensuring that we have a quorum and that we can get our budget adopted by the statutory deadline.
Okay, and so that would be the first three items under the consent agenda on that date that need to have, I mean, obviously someone, I guess, would have to be, to start at noon to make the quorum. And then the first three items on the consent agenda set for public hearing on December 15th.
And there's some intergovernmental agreements that we'd like to get on first reading, which are not showing up in your future agendas, for detox services, public health board.
Okay, and are those as time critical?
We could put those off. I've got to go through, this is a fairly new concern of ours, so I think we'd have to go through and figure out what could be continued or wait, and what we'd need to act on. The budget was what clearly set off the alarm bells, because that has a definite statutory deadline that we need to adopt it by.
Yeah, if we were doing the electronic connection, if we only stuck around for the few essential items and then signed off, then there would no longer be a quorum. So the rest of the meeting we could not
move
proceed.
forward. We'd have to
So
cancel.
then we either would have to stay on for,
That's correct.
or at least one of us would have to stay
I
on.
thought you
for-
couldn't break a quorum by leaving. I thought that if you started with a quorum and one person leaves, the meeting goes
Well,
on because you can't break a quorum.
I suspect, though, we wouldn't want to do the land use and licensing questions with two board members at the table.
Yeah.
Regardless, just in terms of practice, I wouldn't recommend
Sure,
operating
yeah,
that
no, I
way, yeah.
agree.
I think in terms of Robert's Rules of Order, you are exactly right.
That's
It's not how I'd suggest
Yeah,
we
yeah.
move forward,
Yeah,
though.
it doesn't seem like a good
Well,
policy thing to
You
do
know,
that.
this is a thought. I mean, it always depends on the weather, and we have no idea what these roads are like, but, you know, it's a potential of one of, or the two of us leaving early Wednesday morning and being able to get from Colorado Springs up here by either noon or 1 o'clock, and, you know, maybe starting at 1. I guess we're already posted. We probably can't change that start time.
We might be, I think we probably can, actually.
If it's far
Yeah.
enough out. But that would give another hour for travel and be able to, you know, again, depending on Rob and if he's able to come back, we could, I think the business meeting for CCI will be over by then. It should be during the Tuesday meeting. So,
Okay, and you'd rather that than join electronically?
well, it just sounds like listening to all this electronically. I don't know that.
That'd be hard. I have a hard time on electronic.
Okay.
An audio-visual thing where it was actually be on a TV
Yeah.
screen maybe would work easier, but
I just-
rather than, if we did have somebody come back, I still think if only one of us came back to make the quorum, and then one could still be at CCI to get, so we can
Yeah,
get,
yeah, we could do
be
something like that.
represented there the entire time.
So why don't we go ahead and repost the meeting? We'll push it back an hour to 1 o'clock. We don't have many land use items, so that's, I don't think that'd be a problem timing-wise.
How far in advance do you have to post these?
Typically 24 hours.
So we could wait till Monday or even Tuesday.
Yeah. We could.
I would keep it as it is and stay in contact with Rob and on Monday, see where he is, and if he
Okay.
can't make it, we could repost. I mean,
I'll
we're
double-
sort of basing on an
Double check the
assumption.
posting with
I'll
Rob.
double
May
check
or may
the-
not make it back
Yeah.
in time, so.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll double
It's good
check
to
the
have-
posting.
Good to have sort of these options and alternatives, but I would move as we're going to
Yeah,
go along on a normal.
as long as we can double check the posting and how quickly we need to let the public know, because of the newspaper ad that talks about the agenda is usually in by Friday.
Right, and the only other reason is also to just let folks know who may need to adjust their schedules, who are coming in from, whether it be the land use items or such that we're starting an hour late. The earlier we can make that call, the
Right.
easier it is to notify them.
So then the other question then is, again, depending on the status, if Rob may make it back on the weekend, is the Tuesday meeting on the 2nd.
Whether you have a quorum enough to do that, depends on whether Rob comes back.
Because
Yeah.
we've got a couple of joint meetings scheduled on that day with Open Space and with the city.
The city agenda, which we'll be talking about later on today, doesn't really have any action items. They're really more informational items, and so I think even if we don't have a quorum, That's probably not an issue for the joint meeting. The probably bigger question is the joint meeting with open space and trails.
Right.
Again, it's a work session, so there's no, since there are no budget items or such on there, there's really no decision items versus informational items for the board, so I wasn't as concerned about the Tuesday meeting as the Wednesday.
Do you need to have a quorum for the work session?
Work sessions are really mostly administrative or informational in nature, with exception of when we, for example, do an MOI or seek administrative direction from the board. What's fortunate about where we are with our Tuesday agendas, we really don't have any of those items on, so they're really more informational and administrative items that we don't necessarily need a quorum for. So, and much of it, with the exception of the joint meeting with open space and trails, there's really nothing on there that requires a full quorum of the board. Wednesday has big stuff on it, and that was the concern.
Rachel?
Yeah, just as a comment, and I am not going to be here on Tuesday, but this afternoon schedule has a lot of empty time in it.
Right.
There's an hour break between 1 to 2. I mean, is that what I get there? And then I don't think memos of interest and future agendas and everything is going to take an hour and a half all the way to 3:30, and then there's a half hour before the city. So it may be worth looking to see how you could tighten that up a little, or at least give them all the time off at once.
Yeah, and no, we will definitely do that. We sometimes have items come in
that aren't there yet.
Okay, well, it sounds like we've got a little bit of a game plan. We'll keep you posted as I get information from Rob. Is the board okay with going ahead so we can just let folks know now and kind of proactively moving the meeting to the 1 o'clock time frame? And the only reason is so we can inform people sooner rather than later.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking about the drive back from Colorado Springs, and even if the roads are good, it's a pretty long drive.
Yeah,
so
good 5-hour drive. So.
Or more. Yeah. So I think that's a better safe than sorry situation.
Okay.
There.
That's really all I had for you on future agendas.
Okay.
Okay.
I had a couple of things.
George?
So then I was looking for a budget again on December 19th. Let's see, we have...
That's a Friday.
No, maybe it's not the 19th.
The 15th, we
Are you
have the
looking
special
at the
meeting on a
15th?
Monday.
What I was looking at was December, moved to 12/9. December 9th, it didn't seem like we had a very full agenda, and I guess I was thinking about moving that Monday meeting to the 9th so we wouldn't have to come in on a Monday. So Tuesday, December 9th, we don't start till 1 o'clock. So why couldn't we have that budget hearing that morning versus having to come back in on a Monday?
Let me check. I don't think that gives us the posting time for the second reading. And I think that's why we did that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and then the other question I have is, it's out there a little ways, but in January, when we make the transition for the new commissioner, we have let's see, January 6th. Well, I see January 6th is a Tuesday. We don't have a Wednesday meeting on the 7th.
Correct.
But on the 6th, we do have a work session, so Patty would automatically come in as an active commissioner, and Rob would be off at that point.
Yeah, it seems like we've always done that in a regular meeting as opposed to a work session.
Yeah, but it's been a little unusual since we've got sort of a change in the guard.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you Patty's taking the oath of office, so...
At that point, she's the sitting commissioner.
She's the sitting commissioner.
She will, be attending the balance of that meeting, which I would anticipate having a pretty light agenda that day.
Right.
So...
And then we don't actually appoint, well, we can appoint Steve as the chair at that point, and it just gets confirmed at our next regular meeting on the 13th?
Yeah, the official appointment won't happen until the regular meeting on the 14th, unless you want to have a special meeting on the 6th for that purpose.
Because
Yeah,
who-
we
who
might
would-
want to think through that since...
Who would chair?
Yeah.
So Steve should be chairing.
We could do just a temporary chair, have me be temporary
Well,
chair.
you're still...
You're vice
Well,
chair.
I'm
You're
vice
still
chair.
the vice chair.
I'm
Yeah, I don't
So
even
you're
know we have to do
chairing in the
anything.
Yeah,
absence
so I could
of
run the
that
meeting as the
appointment.
vice chair.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then on the, what was the day of the,
I believe the 13th, I'm sorry,
The
14th then is the regular
then make the
meeting.
official,
So on the
appointments.
13th, we'll have a work session where we'll be talking about the appointments. And then on the 14th, we have our first regular meeting of the year where you adopt the resolution making them. And then you would chair the work session, which I anticipate being a fairly short one, as vice chair in the absence of having an appointed chair.
That makes sense.
Okay.
that works for me.
Thank you for bringing that up, George.
And obviously, we'll get a list from staff somewhat
Yep.
before then for us to start thinking about those appointments.
Yep.
Okay, any other future agenda items, Rachel?
Yeah, I just want to put this on our agenda, and it's kind of for other BOCC members to attend. Certainly something that may be of interest to the general public, and I don't know if a given staff member may or may not want to attend either. But on December 11th, from 4 to 6 p.m., Club 20 in Grand Junction is going to host a forum/debate about the concept of transfer of public lands to the states. And that is going to be with Ken Ivory, and he is the director of the American Lands Council out of Utah. And I think they have a CU constitutional law professor lined up to be on the other side of it. Now, I don't know really if the type of issues they're going to bring up have a direct relationship to the constitutional law. They're going to stick on that topic versus what's wrong with the Forest Service and the federal government and everything else. I am going to have a conflict on that day because CCI and QQ have set up a meeting of Front Range and West Slope County Commissioners to talk about water issues and how the land use planning on the Front Range affects our water issues on the West Slope. Now, Steve and I have already talked about it, and Steve said he could go to the Club 20 session just to see them, and I will go to the water issue since that's kind of where I am. But I just think that this is really a critical issue, and this is just a first step. It's a first volley by those who really think that's what would be good for the state of Colorado. But for me, it means you used to hunt there, now you got to pay a private property owner to hunt there. Or that when we think about all the efforts we've put in to buy the appropriate private properties with open space lands that are good for habitat or scenic quality or whatever, are we as Coloradans going to have to start buying back our own open space from the state to have access? And it came up heavily during the debates this fall that the Forest Service, federal government's BLM, a bare minimum accounting of what they spend on the public lands in Colorado is around $200 million a year. And so if you're going to try and generate $200 million a year off of the public lands, you're going to be doing a lot of leasing and selling and privatizing of those lands. And I think if you even look at a comparison with state land board lands that were given to the state when it became a state to help fund education, those are effectively private properties. Once they're leased, you have no public access. You have no right to camp on those properties or anything. So this is really a big issue, and I just wanted to get it on our calendar, and it may be something, whether it's Cindy Hubin who may want to attend or someone from our Open Space and Trails may want to attend, but I think we really need to pay attention to this movement.
And I've already emailed staff about that.
Okay, great. So very good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and there's one other date in December, the following week on December 18th.
Yeah.
There's a meeting in Grand Junction, which is a meeting of the 4 basin roundtables from western Colorado. And that will be held from 9 till
3
3.
at the Ute
Ute
Water
Water
Conservancy office.
in Grand Junction.
And I am planning on attending that. If you can make it as well,
Yeah,
that'd be
I'm
great.
tentatively planning on being there also.
Does John know about that one already?
I don't know. He may, but as a River District member, he may know from that side of things. But again, it's all, what do the 4 western slope basins need to try to say to stop the juggernaut of new Trans Mountain diversions through the state water plan?
Yeah, and I think this meeting will be an important one. The Colorado Basin Roundtable's has been meeting more or less independently with some feedback from the other basins. I mean, probably those in charge of our meetings are much more in tune with what the things that the other basins are putting out. But this will be the first time to actually sit down at the same table and talk about the common issues and a common strategy for approaching the Colorado water plan, and how we think we're better off if we have a unified approach from the western slope basins for sure on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's December 18th, 9 till 3.
Oh, sorry, we left the executive session. Sorry about that.
It might be in the other door too, we should check. Yeah.
Hey, Brian, will you check the other door? Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
We got one.
Okay, there we go. Very good.
We ready for open discussion?
Okay, yeah, let's do open discussion.
Okay. I had a few items, and they're really related to the December 3rd agenda. And they're items we would typically have done brief work sessions with you on beforehand. But between some scheduling issues and also having staff out, we did not get those done. Only one, I believe, is really a new issue for the board, but there are 3 intergovernmental agreements that have been added for first reading to that December 3rd agenda, with the goal of having those adopted going into the new year to 2015. I just wanted to talk to you about those real quick and see if there are any large concerns that we do need to pull back. The first is an intergovernmental agreement between Colorado West Regional Mental Health, doing business as Mine Springs, Detox Center, and Pickens County, the town of Basalt, Snowmass Village, and Aspen. And this is for our detox center that has been up and running for the last year. We basically, as you might recall, in 2013, actually 2012, really, the detox center in Glenwood Springs closed. At the same time, the Right Door announced that they were closing. We lost those resources in the community. We very quickly came together in more of an informal agreement with the municipalities and the county and Mine Springs to stand up a detox center and a continuum of services for treatment. And we've been doing the billing and getting it done. We have developed this intergovernmental agreement for the ongoing funding and responsibilities around the detox center. It does not change the funding at all, but it codifies the model we use to get there. In essence, what the IGA does is it commits the county to 2 things, well, 3 things really. First is providing space at the Schultz Health and Human Services building for running the detox where it is currently located right now. We also agree to be the fiscal agent for the agreement where we bill the other entities for the cost of running the detox. And then it commits us as well as the other entities to financial commitments to the detox, and it's based on a formula. And the formula basically based on admissions where folks are coming to the detox from determines the first cut, which is the hospital share versus the municipality share. Right now, the way the IGA is written, the hospital takes the first 30% of the cost for the detox. The remaining 70% then is split between the county and the municipalities. And that split is based on a formula that includes basically an average of the percentage of liquor licenses in each entity, population in each entity, and then the number of admissions from each entity. We felt that that was a fair way to determine that the likelihood that an entity would be utilizing the detox services. And basically, each year the IGA has the managers sitting down and revisiting just those percentages and that formula and agreeing on it during the budget process. We did that even though we didn't have the IGA this year. Really nothing changed. The budget didn't change, and the shares by each entity didn't change appreciably. And so the IGA that will be in front of the board really just codifies what we've built and what we've been doing over the last year.
So John, how do you determine the population for, let's say, the county? Do you subtract the municipalities?
Yeah,
So
we
you
just use the
unincorporated
unincorporated population, and then we use the incorporated populations. And for basalt, it's just the incorporated population within Pickens County's boundaries. And we're able to get, basically, we use the latest numbers from the state demographer's office.
And then what happens to the residents in Basalt who reside in Eagle County if they need detox services? Who takes care of them?
Right now, there is not a service available to them. Valley View Hospital has been, I think, by default, providing detox services in Glenwood Springs for the uncovered areas. We have certainly, through our partnership with Mine Springs, said we're willing to expand the scope of this as long as we have the capacity and as long as the entities who want to be part of this are willing to contribute financially, which was part of the problem with the Glenwood Springs model. There just wasn't participation.
So in Basalt...
Are we likely getting some folks from Eagle County? Absolutely.
Liquor and bars are in the town of Basalt, which is in Eagle County.
But we're only counting the licenses that are in Pickens County.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but we're probably servicing those people without any support from Eagle County. But Basalt is picking up, Basalt's not picking up that share because that's in Eagle County, not Pickens County.
That's
so
correct.
There's a little glitch there, and we'll sort of see how that you have some stats in terms of the numbers that were helped last year and see if it's...
Yeah, you'll see there's an attachment that will come with the IGA that shows the numbers that were used, and none of these numbers are perfect, but they're numbers that all the entities were able to sit down and agree to, and they seem to at least have a rational nexus to
It just
how
seems
we're
like Basalt should include the town of Basalt, even though it's in Eagle County, because that's where the bulk of the probably the problems will stem from.
And I think you'll see on the utilization side there, it's fairly low.
Yeah, not like in the old days when the Midland was a hopping bar.
Yeah.
Still was a hopping bar.
They still have the two livers.
Yeah.
The thing that I think would make sense is if you could bring us a recap of how that formula paid out last year.
Yep.
Because that way we can get an idea of what it would be like going forward if it's roughly the same.
Yep, it hasn't changed. So actually you'll see the sheet is exactly the same. You'll have a breakdown of how that formula
But
worked out.
again, a recap from last year would be nice. And then I didn't hear you mention Snowmass Village. Are they part
I'm
of the
sorry,
IGA?
they are part of the IGA, I'm
Okay.
sorry, yeah.
Okay.
No, you mentioned.
Okay, well, I just missed it. And then the last is residency. How is that weighted in this? Because it seems that, I know we have a lot of, or you mentioned residency, but I wasn't sure where it's weighted,
No,
because if it's someone's a
it's-
guest.
It's where, so if Basalt Police is bringing them in, they're attributed to Basalt. Aspen, they're attributed to Aspen. But as you point out, we're a tourist-based community. We have a lot of visitors that come in, and in fact, a lot of the utilization of our detox is visitors.
Yeah.
So it's based on which entity is utilizing the detox, not the residency of the person. We're trying to get our hands around that, Rachel,
Okay.
but
'Cause-
that's difficult.
So if somebody did their drinking to excess in city limits and made it past city limits on their way home before they were pulled over for DUI, they would be charged back to Pickens County because we're the ones who caught them.
Yep.
Although the drinking was all done in Aspen.
But remember, that's why we took the number of liquor licenses and population that
that's a
kind of
factor that
captures.
kind of
Yeah, we
equalizes
figured,
everything.
because there's no perfect way to capture all
Sure,
this.
sure.
And so we tried to take some metrics that we could all agree on, so the city, you'll see, actually has the largest contribution on the formula, primarily because of the number of liquor licenses.
Okay. Thanks for
Yeah.
answering those questions.
Yeah, and we'll have that.
John, do you want to continue the discussion on the IGs later?
Yeah,
After
we're
the
probably
budget.
going to have some time towards the end of the meeting. If you guys don't mind continuing open discussion later on, that would be great.
Yeah, because we have gathering quite a crowd here for the budget discussion. And
They're a friendly crowd, though.
They're friendly.
So, John, we had talked about changing the order we were going through this, but everybody is here for the solid waste center discussion, and Tom Oken is not here for the EOTC, unless he's behind the,
I'm not
Nope.
seeing them.
so maybe we should just proceed with the solid waste discussion first.
Yeah, and I think we're going to have a PowerPoint. George, would you guys mind hitting the screen down?
Go ahead and
Yeah.
start. I'm just going to. Ladies first.
Let's see, maybe I'll move over there for right now. So this first discussion on the budget will be about the Solid Waste Center. We have Kathy Hall and Brian Pettit here from the Landfill and Public Works.
Yes, thank you. I'm Brian Pettit, I'm the Public Works Director. I'm here with Kathy Hall, the Solid Waste Manager. And this is really taking off from the last discussion we had with the board about budget. And I think since we made it through pretty much the whole presentation, we would like to start with the discussion of the 2015 initiatives, just to warm up to the budget process again. And then we can get into the numbers and details as the board has questions. So.
All right, thanks, Brian. So just to cover the initiatives we have planned, we're going to continue the permitting process for the landfill expansion. As we've mentioned previously, we have limited life at the landfill, so there's a great need to maximize it in the best possible way. We have about 10 years we can expand to. That would give us about 29 to 30 years more life as we stand today. We're also going to be working diligently on permitting, as well as engineering and designing a wastewater treatment facility at the the landfill. We just recently got proposals back and selected a contractor. And again, I want to mention, we will be back before the board on December 9th to go over the initiatives of the landfill, and we'll go over more detail of what we have coming up, as well as kind of every department of the landfill purpose statement. We'll also be working with the city of Aspen to develop a zero waste plan. This is to increase the diversion rates that we currently have. So we'll be cost sharing that initiative with them.
I'll just stop, Kathy, because we skipped over the shooting range,
Oh.
and probably did for a reason, which is we're really shifting the burden or the challenge of developing this with the public safety groups. So we've convened a task force with public safety entities in Pickens County to figure out exactly what they need and how we can fund that move. Just Kathy's plate was full, and it seemed like they had a need and a role to provide there. So I'm working closely with that public safety group to move the shooting range and to resolve some of the lead contamination issues at the existing range.
Thanks, Brian. I crossed that off on mine. I was like, I don't want to talk about it. So then we'll move forward. We're going to be also partnering with the city of Aspen to re-energize their food waste collection program that was established in 2011. We currently at the landfill take in 17,000 tons of food waste annually, which contributes to greenhouse gas emissions, takes up space in the landfill. As well, it's a completely reusable item to compost and make a really good compost and soil amendment product. We're also working on releasing an educational app on composting. This is for the iPad. Teachers can use in classroom. Wooly the Mammoth will guide kids through on the composting process, and there'll be in-class exercises on how to do a home composting project. We're also looking at developing an electronics recycling program. We currently take in electronics, 200,000 pounds last year at the landfill. So we're working on developing an in-house where we would hire, or we would contract with Mountain Valley Services in Glenwood Springs to bring in people with cognitive disabilities to break down those electronics, get the recyclable pieces out and send that to broker and market. So that's something we're looking at, modeling an outdoor program on the Front Range, and December 9th we'll bring some more details about that as well. And then we're right now completing an intermediate closure on top of the landfill. We are full on top, and we've moved the fill operations, or starting to move the fill operations, down to the lower aggregate yard. So that will be, a several-month process over next year, put the cover on, and then transfer the aggregate materials up to the top.
Kathy, does that, I know the ultimate goal is to have the top of the landfill be, well, I know the composting area, so you could expand that, but then you mentioned moving the aggregate operation up to the top also?
Absolutely. So yes, because the fill is moving down into that aggregate yard, familiar, so garbage is going in place of that. Because we are going to continue to use the top of the landfill as a working area, the state will not make us put final closure on top. So we put an intermediate cover on, it's 12 inches of soil, and we can continue to use that as a working top. And that's for the foreseeable life of the landfill.
Okay. You have a lot happening at the landfill.
You do. And this upcoming December 9th meeting is going to be a good overview of kind of the strategy of all the departments of the landfill, how they all interact, what's their purpose, budgets of that, and then future initiatives of what we have planned. So it'll
Yeah, John and I were talking earlier today about this, and two other areas in the county that have a lot going on are at the airport, where there's lots of overlaying projects all going on simultaneously at different stages. And then the other is always at open space and trails. They have lots of things going on all the time. And both of them have provided us with a diagram that shows the different projects running across the page this way, and then a timeline going across the page, and kind of what part of each year that these different things will be under planning, under construction, that sort of thing. And I
Kind of a
think,
critical path of the project transition.
yeah, and I think that would be helpful if we could have that for this also.
What Steve had suggested, and it was a good idea, is basically a Gantt chart with those critical milestones, particularly the touch points back to the board and decision points, and kind of, as you were saying, Kathy, the staffing responsible for those. Because one of the things I think we've been struggling all to get our heads around which parts are moving where, and different board members have had different concerns. And so, one concern is if we can, address kind of the timelines and resource allocations and such, so that the board has a sense of all the moving parts, because there are a lot right now at the landfill. That may allow us to step back more into the strategic role of what is it that we're really wanting the landfill to be accomplishing, and do we have the right priorities from our policymakers' perspectives going forward? And it seems like we're having some trouble getting to that discussion together. And so Steve had suggested this might be a good structure. I think that's something we could deliver pretty easily.
Mm-hmm. And kind of, I just want to retouch back on these initiatives. The first few I discussed, of course, the landfill expansion, the septic treatment system, these are big ones. A composting app, food waste program are pretty small in budget-wise, so these are very weighted very differently. And so I think December 9th, our meeting will kind of lay that out, which are the big important ones and which ones are important as well, but not as big.
Yeah, I really look forward to that meeting. I think we really need to have it, and I think a little bit maybe it's just linguistics of how things are presented, but it's always as if you come and say, look, this is all that we're doing, and we're like, well, when did we start doing that, And I don't know any other department that embarks on major initiatives without telling us that or asking, is that the direction you really want us to go? And I'm not saying any of these are bad things, but I'm someone who's much more about doing what you got on the plate 100% right than having too many energies spread out. And there's been a little bit of a sense of that, honestly. And, even looking at this, the developed electronics recycling by indirectly employing the cognitively disabled people, I really want to know more about that before we put a lot of time into it,
Right.
Because I'm concerned about liability issues. I'm concerned about, separate from liability issues, someone's actual personal safety and health there. I know there's a lot of toxic chemicals and materials inside electronics. I don't want to be exposing someone who may, make a mistake and take their gloves off for a little while or something. And I've had some other company experience with people who thought they were going to save a lot of money there and then end up having to redo a lot of the work. And, I need to know what the cost-benefit comparison of just shipping it to a firm that specializes in doing that versus trying to bring people into our landfill and do it there. And so, I just don't like to see too much time put into developing a program until we've checked in with the board first to say, do we want to develop a program like that?
Absolutely, and
So-
I think December 9th we'll present, we only have an hour on December 9th, and that'll be a good time to say, we want to hear more on e-waste, we want to hear more on this, and then we can come back.
Sure.
January, we'll be here with the wastewater treatment system and the consultants and engineers that are starting task one of that as well, to give a full in-depth session on it.
Okay, because I know that the state did pass new legislation to, put additional requirements on landfills related to keeping e-waste out of the main stream, and we need programs to do that. But I just want to really feel that all the parts are moving in the same direction at the same time, and we all know what those parts are.
Absolutely. So we want to jump into the budget numbers?
Yeah.
We can't get this to forward.
Is that not, and the remote isn't working?
No, it's not.
That the whole thing's not in there. Yeah.
Can I see the remote?
All right, just turn.
So 2014 has been a very good year for the landfill. We show some good revenues and crushable. A lot of the construction is picked up definitely in the valley. So we're looking very positive on the year. It does show at the bottom our annual surplus as a deficit. However, we're projecting the year-end out numbers, we're going to be in the positive. We've been busy. So again, some of the upcoming things coming up, a big capital expenditure is the wastewater treatment facility. On here, it's $721,000 as we had budgeted this year. We didn't spend any of that. It'll forward into next year. Finance has changed it on their table to indicate that that's actually wastewater treatment plant money.
Is that the?
Other department equipment and capital.
So it says the estimate is 732, the year-end estimate, 732,000.
Correct.
So some of that's been spent, but then, or is all that amount going to be carried into 2015?
Very little has been spent. We've done some pre-permit.
So most of that's
work. It's gonna
carried forward? Okay.
So, and that didn't make it into your presentation, but Connie assured me that it is in the, it has been designated in the finance spreadsheets.
And has the additional matching funds for the wastewater grant
yes.
been put into this budget yet?
Yes, we do. The county does have a match. I know there was some concerns last week. The county does match the $125,000 grant award. However, permitting costs, which are already allocated and budgeted, staff time, all of that counts as the county match. There was a disconnect between us and finance on
Understanding.
Yeah, so
Okay.
that supplemental would not come back in front of you as the
We're gonna
match
get
is already
credit for
budgeted.
in-kind.
Yeah, basically.
Okay, so it wasn't a cash outlay?
Correct.
Oh, good, well, that's very good.
Yes, and then there was other concerns about spending all that money on a grant. We don't have the money, they didn't give us a check for that amount. It's a top set number. If we don't spend it all, we don't use it all, so we'll try our best to do it.
So that 124,000 is included in the $732,000?
The county
grant.
match, yeah, most of that, yeah.
Okay.
There is some labor that's not accounted for in that line item that's also in-kind services, but primarily all the permitting fees are part of that $730,000 item.
Okay.
That's a good clarification. I really think you should try to, maybe John could send an email with that clarification to our board members who are not able to be here today. I think that'd be very helpful.
So we do have some equipment purchases coming up. Those are some other big expenditures coming out. We're buying a new hook truck with multiple attachments. So that should be arriving on site probably this month. And then also next year we have some other equipment purchases, a loader, new loader for the facility, as well as a windrow turner to improve the compost operations.
Okay. Yeah, on both the 2015 and 2016 years, you have over $600,000 on vehicles, and that's that equipment you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, loaders and all that are $400,000. Windrow turner's just a small one that's 75. So that's our plan.
And then next year after that, it drops off to a fraction of that.
So we currently have a contract to do a lot of work out to the landfill, and they have their own equipment. So if we're purchasing new equipment, how does that jive with the current contract? I don't understand.
They have equipment to run the fill operations as well as the aggregate. They load vehicles. We still need a loader. We currently have an old loader on site that we also turn the compost piles with. We load various things, so we still need some of our own equipment.
Okay. So do we have, it's just similar to what Steve brought up earlier, at the airport when we get requests for capital improvements and equipment, we actually sort of see what it is and have a dollar sign equated to that. I think it's part of the sort of getting the bigger picture here.
So you want to see the equipment and such that's
I want to
being
drive the
proposed.
equipment.
I do too, but they won't let me, George.
Well, we got machine. It helps clarify for me exactly, very
What you're
just saying,
getting
this is
in.
for equipment, and Kathy gives a real brief description, which I really don't understand what it's used for.
Yeah. I was going to say, I'm not sure if there's different detail in the capital
Well,
plan
in the
or...
detail on the equipment replacement, that's there, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you would have a good picture of what it, so yes, there's more detail in the budget information that's been provided to you than is in the summary 5-year plan, but does that mean you know what a hook truck is and how it's being used at the landfill? That's a different level of narrative that we need to bring back to you.
Yeah, I was thinking something very similar to George, and, you know, I was just going to ask the question, does this number match what we had in the capital replacement plan already, or has it changed for both of those 2 years, 15 and 16? And then, as we're really nailing down this larger master plan of the landfill and its different programs, it'd be nice to have kind of a list of what type of equipment we think will be the complement to the physical activities. What is it, and then what replacement schedule will we have going out on those things, whether it's the scale at the front driveway or whatever. But I think it'd be really good to kind of have that inventory and then be able to look, so there's no surprises on replacement or what years to replace.
Is that already in the?
No, I'm talking about it being a component of the master plan, you know.
Yeah.
So for existing, yeah, we do have a replacement schedule, but I think what, Rachel, you're trying to, because we've got so many moving parts, understanding how that might drive changes to what we've been looking at year after year.
Yes.
Is that,
yes,
do I
and
capture
just
that
so that,
correctly?
you know, we have a template, a map of this is what it looks like, and this is what it takes to run it, and this is the personnel it takes to run it, you know, kind of all three, and then we'll be able to look in the future at that capital replacement plan and say, oh yeah, you know, we know what the hook truck does. Because when you say hook truck, I was thinking, oh, isn't that the truck that picks up the recycling bins, and we don't need that anymore? But it's not, you know, and the narrative, as you said, John, a little bit of what and why.
Yep. That's doable, and so that's not captured in our current replacement plan, that's in addition to.
So that would kind of go along with the other diagram of the different projects. It'd be-
Yeah, no,
the
I
equipment and personnel needs to run the different projects.
Right, right. So we are at a decision point, and what my recommendation is for the board is, I think we've heard there's a disconnect right now in understanding between, you know, some of the projects and how they're moving forward in the budget. Our commitment is to come back. I think we've heard now more about the narrative and the format that the board would like to see that in. And so before we move on expending any funds on the major initiatives that we have proposed, we'll commit to come back, just like we have in the other areas that, you know, Steve referenced, like with the airport, we had the appropriation up front, but we said we're going to come back at each phase and talk to you before moving forward. On the 9th, we'll be able to start to lay out, here's what some of these phases look like. You'll have an opportunity to say, here's where we want to dig deeper. And then we can set up the same kind of process to check in before we, you know, move on to a next phase of expenditures on any of the initiatives. And so I would suggest treating this like we have those other areas where we go ahead and approve the budget plan with the understanding that before dollars are expended, we're coming back and doing a check-in with the board.
Do we have a line item, I don't see it here, but for our, when we went to our single stream recycling and the changes we made throughout the county on that?
It's included in the services and supplies line in this budget document.
Yeah, I would like to see, I think maybe we should break that out. I know that we've never really completed our discussions, maybe it's ongoing with the city of Aspen in terms of some sort of code sharing in terms of the cost for the Rio Grande. And so, and because this is a new program this past year, we're probably still evaluating the costs and the savings, but it seems like we should break that out.
Can do that.
Yeah, I had a comment that was similar, but not as focused on that item. I think that when we do the larger meeting, and maybe it's the 9th, maybe it's an additional meeting after that, but I'd like to see these different revenues and expense items broken down a little more into a line item. I'm sure you have it to have gotten to this point, but presenting this budget all on one page while we're less familiar is a challenge for me. And in particular, I'm kind of sitting here going, okay, where is the revenue that's going to come in from the new sewage handling? And is it under what? And how much is it? Are we anticipating? And I just think that it would be good to have that broken down, and even the service charges being this really big number of, 4 million some odd, to know how much of that is the pure waste garbage from the haulers, how much of that is revenue from the construction materials and things that we recycle, because it's, and I know we're asking a lot of you, Kathy, but it's just because it's a big operation and we're making a lot of commitments to expanding the size of it, and will that pencil out and things like that. But it's hard to tell where our revenue comes in from sales of product. I'd love to see sales of how much compost, how much aggregate, what contributes to that really large number. And so then we can also then track whether the septic tank and sewage treatment ends up matching our expectations in the future and paying for itself. So.
Yeah, I agree with you, Rachel. That would be great. It's really a whole lot of different enterprises all operating there, with different things, different services we're providing and different things we sell. And
and obviously this is just the short version of that, and that work has been done, but I think that when we discuss it next, we should look at the whole breakdown.
Also, just the waste management contract, and because that was touted as, saving us $200,000 or whatever per year, but then that doesn't, it's mixed in with the numbers here. And if we could break all of that stuff out. So the landfill's providing tremendous service to the community, and we're extending the life of the landfill in the process, which is saving us money along the way. But it's hard to see all of that in the figures the way that they are.
We can do that.
Okay. Rachel?
Yeah, one last comment before we move on, and this may be in the right place, it may not, I'm not sure. But I think it's really important to work with waste management over the holiday season for the pickups and order additional pickups as needed. I did stop by there a couple days ago, end of last week, and boy, I noticed the uptick for the holiday season. I just don't think they have any idea how the volume will increase with people recycling once they're unwrapping all the Christmas merchandise and putting it on the shelves, and people unwrapping their packages from home and trying to bring it over there. And it can get to be a real mess. People will just leave their trash outside. If you've loaded it all into your car and there's no place to stuff it into, you're just going to pile it on the asphalt. And I've seen it in past years, well before your time, Kathy, but I think we really, really need to be on top of that, especially if we're going to be talking to the city about kind of sharing it, and then they're out there picking up popcorn that's blowing into the Rio Grande Park because our bins are overflowing.
And we've scheduled already extra pickups. They're starting next week after going through December.
Wait till you see what's out there the day after Thanksgiving.
I know, yeah.
So does that, just to piggyback off that, does that include the site up in Redstone as well? How is that working?
That's going great. We've seen it slow down because of the winter months. It's certainly busier in the summer. There are 3 bins out there, and they do pick them up twice a month. They're going to go to once a month just to see, but yeah.
They're going to go not one,
There's two recycle days, the first Thursday and the third Saturday. And if Jed Miller, who lives up there, checks it, if the bins are full after the first Thursday, then they'll pick up. If they're not, then we hold waste management off and they'll pick it up after the third
okay,
Saturday.
I'm just piggybacking off of Rachel's concern in terms of the holiday.
I wouldn't cut back till January if
Yeah.
I was you. You know?
Yeah, I'd just offer anecdotally, I mean, this is kind of a thing to celebrate, because I think our bin space has increased. And, you know, anecdotally, I'm a Snowmass Village resident, and they did the switch to single stream in partnership with us. And in my little area where we drop off, we used to have two 55-gallon recycling bins. That was it, and they always had room in them. When they went to single stream, those started overflowing right away, so they went to 4. Then they went to 6. Then they went to a dumpster. Now they're at 2 dumpsters. And you know, I think they're going to need to probably go to 3 here to accommodate all the recycling. And I think, and we had the same issues of capacity and that sort of thing, and figuring out this new balance. But watching the growth and how much was ending up in those recycling bins versus was ending up in the trash bins, that is, yes, we've all missed it, but it's a good problem for us to have in terms of that curve. And just want to acknowledge that I think that's a win for us.
Very good.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll see you December 9th, if not sooner.
Yeah.
And we'll take that as a nod to include that in the budget, and we'll keep coming back to you at December 9th on.
Okay.
So can I suggest going to the transit sales and use tax budget?
Yeah, we got Tom in here now.
Tom, you want to?
Skip around a little bit today in the presentation.
Sorry to come back and forth from being too hot. I was out sick yesterday. I didn't go down to my grandma's meetings. I just saw it.
I've been going back and forth with something.
Yeah.
Molly is really getting sick now with some kind of congestion.
Molly?
Molly is
Sometimes I
Okay, so this is the budget for the county's 0.5% transit sales and use tax. And for next year, we're projecting that that tax will generate about $5.6 million in revenue. Although this is part of the county budget, as you're aware, we also need approval from the Aspen City Council and the Snowmass Village Town Council for expenditures out of this fund. And you met with them back in October, reviewed this budget in detail, and approved it. So not much for us to go over right now. I would mention maybe there were 3 items of significance that were discussed at that meeting. One was an increase in our subsidy payment for X Games transportation, and that was increased from $100,000 previously to $115,000 for next year and subsequent years. That's an annual subsidy. Another increase that was requested and approved was for the subsidy for no fare bus service between Aspen, Snowmass, and Woody Creek. And that had been running at about $552,000 a year. RAFTA requested an increase of approximately $70,000, which was approved, bringing the total to about $622,000 a year is the subsidy for that service then. And then the final item, which was the biggie, is $3.9 million to support the remodel of the Ruby Park Transit Center in Aspen. And that project in total, I believe, is closer to $8 million, $7.9 million is the total, $3.9 million from our revenue source and $4 million from federal, state grants, RAFTA, City of Aspen's kicking in some. So those were the three items of discussion.
And they've all been worked into the budget.
Yeah. So, any questions?
Here's a question. Our next ELTC meeting, or we talked about coming back to the ELTC in the springtime, at that point to see whether there's a need to ask for any supplemental budget requests, whether it be for the Basalt Underpass or the Grand Avenue Bridge, or even RAPTA's perhaps look at their 2016 numbers to maintain the no fare service between Snowmass and Aspen. So would that all happen sort of during?
Yeah, we had, Brian, when he, is Brian still behind the pillar there? Okay, sorry. Brian, when he presented, had brought up to the EOTC that there were several projects, kind of like pending projects, that may be coming back for funding requests, Basalt Underpass. One that we still need to visit with you about, but there may be an opportunity to do some more paving on the Buttermilk parking lots that we're exploring. Grand Avenue Bridge. Was there any other ones? Was it those three? But so we know that I thought we had a meeting in February that we're looking at bringing those.
We do, and we're hoping that in between now and then, Basalt can dial in what their request will be, as well as CDOT for those two. We're working with Ski Company now to figure out exactly what we would need to basically pave the Buttermilk lots. So more information to come.
Yeah, okay, good.
So could you describe a little bit the Buttermilk Lot Project? Because we already have our share of the lot there.
Yeah,
Is that going to be redesigned, or what is the project?
There's really three separate lots there. One of them have been paved, the one closest to 82. The other two lots are also owned in joint ownership right now between the state and the county. Since Buttermilk's been redeveloped, the ski company has proposed cost-sharing new pavement in the other two lots. We shared expense on the lot we paved closest to 82, and we're hoping to emulate that on this next project. We just don't have the numbers dialed in yet, nor is the ski company as far along on their Buttermilk redevelopment as they'd like to be right now.
Mm-hmm.
And that was originally proposed, was to pave all of those lots, but I believe we were short of the cash funding at the time that the first paving occurred, and so this is another opportunity for us to look at a similar partnership.
And so that would happen after the construction of the children's ski school building, whatever they call that, is all completed. And so it's not just getting paved and then trashed by the heavy equipment or something.
Exactly right.
The trick, I think, would be, is there an opportunity while they're mobilized out there to have some cost savings? And so that's what we're looking at.
Rachel?
As we go to seeing it all paved, I really would like to make sure we have a good stormwater management program for that. I mean, that's creating a lot of impervious surface there, and how is it running off, and where is it running off, and how's it being treated would be important components to me.
I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the ideas, and this was something we'll bring in February, is to create a pervious surface, a surface made of tiles that would allow the water to infiltrate across that parking area.
Yeah.
So we're going to see how much that costs as well.
Yeah, that would be good. And then I think the other alternatives are maybe, can it be filtered through the wetlands that's on the other side of the Owl Creek Road, which I don't know, starts to get on the airport property. But, you know, again, it just, we want to make sure we're you know, towing our own line on water treatment. And we're seeing the city do so much down here at Rio Grande Park to try and clean up the water before it goes to the river, that understanding what that our design is there would be important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So
okay.
we are at a decision point for the EOTC funding.
Although you've already decided.
We have already decided.
We already voted on it, and nothing
We
is,
haven't appropriated it.
Tom,
nothing is different between this and what we approved before.
No,
It's the same.
what you saw
I was
there.
going to say, are any of the revenues going to be projected up when the sales taxes come in from the city for September so high and things like that? I mean, are the revenue numbers up a little?
They are running over budget
A
this
little.
year. We haven't really changed our projections
For
for
future.
next year for any of the county sales tax. But, so right now, we're projecting a 5.9% increase.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty healthy.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting we change that just as much as our baseline for the end of the year collections might be a little higher than we were looking at the last DOTC.
True.
Okay, is everybody okay with reapproving it
Yeah,
again?
sounds good.
Great.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay, I'd like to have you jump to slide number 8 in your presentation for the Healthy Rivers and Streams Fund.
Okay. And John Ely, are you going to represent the Healthy Rivers and
Lisa
Streams?
and I will both do it.
Oh, Lisa's here too. I couldn't see you behind our obstacle here.
Yeah.
Okay, as the board knows, the Healthy Rivers and Streams Fund and budget is reflective of a segregated and dedicated revenue stream from a particular sales tax source of revenue that was approved by the voters in 2008. The current budget reflects a number of ongoing, or the current proposed budget reflects a number of ongoing projects. The numbers associated with many of the line items, though, are placeholders as the BOCC approves each particular project individually as it goes forward. Not so much with a direct appropriation unless it exceeds these amounts, but certainly through a direct authorization and direction to proceed. So even though the board will be approving a budget for the Healthy Rivers and Streams Fund, it does not mean or imply that the board won't see individual expenditures as they're proposed and a direct authorization for those individual expenditures will be requested. In regards to the sheet or the slide that is on the screen now, given what the level of actual expenditures are for 2014, note for the board that I would anticipate the ending or end of the year, how's it called here? Ending available fund balance to be closer to $2 million. And that is a consequence of a few different things. Number one, the projects that the 2014 budget is associated with were not completed in 1 year, but represent a multi-year cycle, and as a consequence, much of the money that was appropriated in individual line items from the water projects line item down through water rights acquisitions were not fully completed, and therefore money remains in those line items for going into the 2015. Also, as Lisa continues to take over more and more of the operation of the fund, there is a different profile for time associated with that, as well as an assumption of additional legal efforts associated with the fund, so that the county is not going to outside counsel as much as we have in the past. I expect those trends to continue into 2015, and I expect that work that was contemplated at the beginning of 2014 will be pursued, and if not brought to conclusion, at least additional work would be done on those items. In that regard, I would anticipate the line item for water projects to probably be closer to $400,000 in actual expenditures by the end of the year, and the water rights acquisition line item to be closer to $600,000 or $700,000 by the end of the year. which would leave us, given the level of revenues expected to come into the county to this particular fund, I would think that the end of the year amount on hand would be closer to $1.7 million. The actual work on these various projects, including the kayak park or the water park, the cleanup efforts associated with Coal Creek, improvements to the wetlands in North Star, acquisitions, and other studies, as well as grants to outside requesting parties, I would expect to proceed apace. If the board has any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
George?
John, where does this show the expenditure for the participation in purchase of the Schumacher, Coal Creek Schumacher open space?
It's not shown on there.
So, should it be?
Yeah. This is a sheet that Connie prepped. I mean, it reflects what was budgeted and what was anticipated to be done. The Schumacher acquisition was something that was not on the radar, so to speak, at the beginning of 2014. So that, I assume, would be fed in there. I'll let Connie address that particularly, but I imagine that'll be done as a budget reconciliation for the end of this year, sometime in the beginning of 2015.
Okay.
Is that in the Healthy Rivers and Streams fund or the open space?
Healthy Rivers and Streams.
Both.
Yeah.
And what was it, 250,000
I think it was-
contribution
Yeah,
from this fund?
250,000.
I think we have adequate appropriations within the fund to address that are unused. And so, as John said, it's more of an accounting reconciliation at the end. But we'll double check that. But typically, Healthy Rivers and Streams has some pockets of funding that are appropriated and then brought back to the board for approval throughout the year. I wouldn't anticipate that we'd need an additional appropriation at this point for that. But
For Schumacher's already been appropriated. The ordinance authorizing the execution of the contract also included an appropriation from both funds, Open Space and
Yeah.
Healthy Rivers.
I think
So you're good as far as the appropriation goes. It's just, I thought George's question was more to
the budget, bottom line here.
seeing it.
Right,
And the year
right.
balance and things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So would that be under water, it's sort of a water projects thing?
The way it's
Would
been,
it show up there?
right, the way it's been line itemed is going to be for water projects. And, in fact, there are 3 particular projects that carry through. Schumacher and related water quality efforts for Coal Creek as being one, the water park or kayak park itself being another, and North Star wetlands.
Okay, it's a little puzzling to me that it doesn't show up either. I can
Well,
see why
the
George asked that.
Schumacher did not go through the budget process. And
That was
so-
just a project over 5,000 that we approved out of,
Right, but there's sufficient appropriations within the fund to cover it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
so it will be money from the fund balance will go in to pay for that basically on the budget sheet.
I don't think you'll see a net change in the fund balance in the 5-year plan, because the 5-year plan assumes expenditure of all appropriated funds. You've got enough appropriations to cover it, even though it's not spelled out as a separate line item.
Okay. So decision point on this one is just a thumbs up that it's okay with us, the way the budget reads. Is that right, John? Rachel?
Yeah, I'm okay with the budget. I think it's well managed and well utilized for its purposes. I think it'd be valuable maybe as we go into the new year and review different projects and workloads from everybody, whether it's the Solid Waste Center or this, to actually kind of have what I would call like a project sheet on those 3 projects, you know, what we anticipate happening at Coal Creek or when or how, and you know, I know that's longer out there. It takes a lot of time to scope it out. But then, you know, where and how are we with the kayak park and what are the plans for North Star? Because we had the meeting with Basalt I think, last week and talked to them a little about it. And their big thrust was, well, can we coordinate our planning with the upper kayak park and what we're looking at lower on our riverbank, and we'd like you guys to be involved with that, and we'd like you to be involved with ours, and how to. I think the outcome of both together could just be outstanding, and what an incredible stretch of river you'd have there for those recreational purposes, and they understand the value of the RISD and things like that, but it'd be nice to kind of have a how are we going to proceed type of thing. I know at different times you've been looking for whether the board's fully behind it or not fully behind it, but the last time we talked about it was a real clear go-ahead. We got the RISD from Hickenlooper this summer, and we're not able to really start calling that water until we've put structures in the river, so I'd like to proceed with that. And so it'd just be good to kind of have an outline of how we're going to see these three major projects proceed.
No problem.
Great. So I'm okay with the budget.
Okay, I'm too. Okay. Thank you very much, and keep up the good work on these things.
Yeah. And then, Steve had brought something up earlier during our future budget discussions, just to make sure you have the date of December, the 18th for the Youth Water Conservancy District. There's going to be a 4-basin roundtable meeting to come up with our mutual strategy for how to work with the state water plant.
You water in Grand Junction from 9 till 3 on the 18th.
It's a nice building.
Yeah, it's a good meeting building. So just want to make sure you're aware of that.
No, I didn't. What date?
It is December 18th. River District's kind of pulling it together, so I thought they might have given it to you separately, but it's the 18th from 9 to 3 in GJ.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So we're going to jump back to the beginning of this presentation now, on slide 2. Happy 4th today. We brought our proposed 2015 budget to you on October 14th originally, and gave you a list of all of the different county funds, our proposed 2015 revenues and expenditures. And on December 3rd, we will be bringing that back to you along with the 3 budget resolutions. In the meantime, in that almost 2-month period, there are a number of changes that have occurred as different issues have come up, as we've looked at the numbers and made tweaks and little changes and modifications. And so today I just wanted to hit on a few of the larger changes that have occurred in that intermediate time, and that will be reflected in the numbers that we bring back to you for the first budget readings on December 3rd. So slide number 3 has a number of general fund budget changes. The first one is an adjustment to the investment income in the general fund. Tom Oken has taken another look at the investment income projections for where it will end up in 2014, changing fund balances. And so we have reduced the 2015 investment income by over $17,000. And over the 5-year plan in general fund, it's a reduction of $437,000. We still are left with a large surplus in the general fund operations, even with this change.
So, Connie, is that related to our construction projects that will be lowering our capital fund?
Part of it is Tom's look at where the investment income is coming in, what the fund balances are, how fund balances are changing. So it's more a reflection of the amount of money that will be invested both in 2015 and then in the out years.
And it's even, I think, a little, I don't know if Tom is still in the room, I can't see behind the pillar
No,
here,
it's
but
not.
it's not just the fund balance number like what you see in here as an end of the year. It's really kind of estimating where's that cash balance going to be. So what are the inflows and outflows, and what is the cash balance at any given time that we're receiving interest income on? So we've adjusted those as either projects have been paid out, or we're projecting that, maybe they're going to be, cash balances are going to be different than we originally anticipated. So.
Okay.
And similar adjustments have also been made in all of the different county funds. In some, it was insignificant, in others, it's a little bit bigger. So the numbers that we'll bring back in December do reflect those changes. The second item on this list is the addition of $14,000 for renting a BOCC meeting room during the election season in 2015. We discussed that at an earlier budget meeting. A third item, an addition of $42,000 as an annual payment to the City of Aspen for fiber use for our IT department. And then the other changes that are listed under the general fund, for the most part, are net zero. There are equal revenues and expenditures. In dispatch, the Public Safety Council requested an additional $20,000 for possible radio services. We will be taking a much better look at the whole radio area of the county in 2015, and the Public Safety Council thought that it was good to have a little bit extra available to them should they need additional services. This is a net zero impact on our budget as there are revenues to cover. The Public Safety Council has money that goes through our budget for different projects of theirs. This was omitted in our first go-around and has now been added in. Again, equal amount of expenditures and revenues. In the Health and Human Services building, we had a transposition error and actually have an expenditure reduction. And then the last bullet point, which is not in your presentation but is on the slide, is public health. We have reported as a separate fund in our budget resolution for a number of years. Grant monies from the state to community health flow through this public health fund. They are required by law to flow through the county to community health. At the request of our auditors, we are pulling this into the general fund and will not be showing it as a separate fund. So it's just an accounting change. Again, equal amount of revenues and expenditures, but it does change those numbers in our general fund. Then in the capital fund, I have added $150,000 for the second phase of the courthouse windows project. This was in originally and then was taken out as I thought that it was included in the 2014 appropriation. It was my mistake. So we've added that back in. So there is a change in the number in the capital fund expenditures for this project. Questions on any of these changes?
On the courthouse windows project, is that the extra $150,000, does that mean that more windows will be replaced or the same number that was anticipated in the...
It's the second phase. So Jody came to you, I think
So
about
the first
a month.
phase is the part facing the east and north facing the construction area.
Facing towards Galena, and then we had talked about a second phase on this side of the building when we are presumably doing construction here. And there was just confusion about that being two separate projects versus one project that we were switching years. And so it was just a mistake that was made that we caught.
So we're still looking at it as two projects, but we just had to
Right. So
shift some money over to reflect what was actually happening, basically.
we had it, but we had one phase budgeted. So we had one side budgeted for next year, for 2015. Jody came to you to actually do a first phase, the Galena Plaza phase in 2014. The confusion was, I think finance believed that we were just moving the project from 2015 to 2014 versus having a 2014 and a 2015 project to do both corners, if you will.
Okay.
I think we're saying the same thing, Steve.
Okay.
Um,
Rachel.
I just want to affirm that when we get to the final budget hearings in December, the bar charts that show us the red, green, blue, and everything, that will be adjusted to reflect all these changes?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Next, the ambulance district. When we brought the budget to you in October, of course, the vote had not yet occurred. In the meantime, voters have approved an increase in the mill levy for the ambulance district. So there is the change here, an additional $339,000 over what was presented to you in October. Along with this goes a change in the amount budgeted for motor vehicle revenue and also for treasurer's fees. We have increased the mill levy up to 0.4 mils, which is not the full increase that voters approved. It's only about halfway up. In order to add in $50,000 for a facilities needs study and $250,000 for a first phase of building design. And so those changes you'll see in the final numbers. In the airport, the changes that they have are in their revenues. You recently saw their agreements on rental car concessions. There is a new provider in the airport, plus an increase in the maximum annual guarantee for the rental car companies. That increased their revenue budget. In the airlines, there is a slight increase in terminal rent and landing fee revenue due to an expected increase both in traffic and also in the rates. And then transit sales and use tax, as Tom Oken just mentioned, the $3.9 million for Ruby Park Transit Center contribution was not included in the October version and now is in the budget. Then under other minor tweaks and adjustments, the main adjustment that I'd like to bring up is, again, the interest income that has been adjusted in all of the other funds too. Questions on these?
Just for my curiosity, but why is there a change to the motor vehicle and sheriff's office budget from the ambulance district?
It's not sheriff's office, motor vehicle, I'm not sure if we...
It's specific ownership tax.
Okay.
Thank you. We budget the motor vehicle ownership tax as a percentage of property tax.
Okay, well, so you're saying this has nothing to do with the ambulance district vote? That's all I really needed to know?
It doesn't have to do with the vote. The ambulance district receives a portion of the motor vehicle specific ownership fees, tax that comes in. And as their property tax increases, so does their share of this revenue.
Okay.
And so that's why that revenue line is increased by about $10,000.
Okay.
And then treasurer's fees are 5% of property tax by state law. And so as the property tax goes up, their expenditure also goes up.
Okay, so that's the ambulance district's expenditure for treasurer fees, and then there would be a corresponding increase in treasurer fees for that same amount?
In the general fund, yes.
In the general fund. Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, we have one other issue that we'd like to present to you. When Tom Isaac came to you to talk about the assessor's budget for 2015, from his discussion and your questions, we realized that we probably did not have enough budgeted for Board of Equalization hearings for 2015. This slide shows you the costs going back a number of years. During the years when the new values were sent out to property owners. And in 2009, notices were sent out in May that reflected property changes in June 2008. And the 2009 budget numbers there reflect the large amount of appeals that were received that year. We are not expecting such a drastic amount. But we do think that the current budget of $24,300 is maybe a little small, that there could be more appeals than that, and would like to bring this number up to $40,000 to make sure that we're covered in this area.
I'm okay with that.
And of course, we'll be watching, as the appeal. This is a very difficult thing to to project. And so obviously if we don't need it, it won't be spent. If the appeals come in at a greater rate than we expect, we'll be back in front of you with a supplemental.
So this change will also be included then in the numbers we bring back to you.
Okay.
And that is all for our presentation today. Any other questions or issues?
And so for the board, this is actually now our last work session before we actually bring the budget resolutions and the final budget back to you. When we do that, we'll have the summary information updated in a similar but shorter fashion than our original budget presentation, so you can see the impacts of these decisions. In essence, there are not a lot of really big changes from the proposed budget outside of really the EOTC funding.
You know, one thing I should just make you aware, it's a very small budget thing relative, but through Colorado Counties, Inc., there is like ongoing discussion about the Public Lands Steering Committee, Traveling Committee, and concerns being raised as to the most effective use of the money, or how should we go, and that's a fund that additional counties who have public lands choose to contribute to, and some are choosing not to contribute because they just say, well, the work's being done by others, and others are like, I don't know if it's worth it. So I don't know what's going to happen there. So that's been, I think, traditionally about $6,000 contribution from our county, and if they agree on a new budget that has the $6,000 counties going up 10%, it might be another $600 or something like that. It's an accounting error, as they call it, but it could change. It could be that we don't make that contribution in the future, and then we use it for our own travel as necessary to lobby on and participate on public lands issues. So we might see that happening too.
Yeah, and we're having that discussion at CCI the first week of December, the same days that you're talking about budget here, so.
Yeah,
Or
no, actually, that
the days
is on
before.
Monday, fortunately.
Yeah, is that on Monday we're having that discussion?
That's a Monday.
Yeah,
So we'll just see what
Monday,
happens.
December 1st.
I think there's probably enough appropriated in your budget that it could cover that amount.
Yeah.
But we
But
can take
I
a
just
look
wanted to
at
let
it
you
if we
know.
need a supplement.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Connie.
And that is our last work session on budget. Congratulations, guys. Thank you.
Not bad at all.
So, John, how we doing for time here?
Well, we have till
We have
3:15, and I had still a couple of open discussion items on the December 3rd agenda, if you guys are open for that.
Let's finish the open discussion, then we'll take a break, and then at 3:30 we have citizen board interviews, two of them back to back.
Okay.
So-
And, well, we also have the preparation for the meeting with the city, and maybe we can do that before 3:15 also.
We'll see how far we get. I'll try and get it all in. So I was telling you before we were interrupted by finalizing our budget that we have 3 intergovernmental agreements that are going to be on the December 3rd agenda. We talked about one, which is detox. The other, which isn't a surprise, but it's been a long time since we've talked about it, is an intergovernmental agreement with the city of Aspen on the provision of public and environmental health services. We're actually going to talk about this one a little bit at the joint meeting also, but you may recall that both boards gave direction for staff to develop an intergovernmental agreement to dissolve the city's Board of Health, create a commitment for the county to reconstitute its Board of Health to include a representative from Aspen and a representative from Snowmass. The one piece that took a while to work out with the state is there's the city of Aspen does want to retain administration and state funding for its environmental health, so consumer health and environmental health functions that it currently runs. And so the intergovernmental agreement both addresses the board issues and then how we're going to deal with the state funding that comes through for those purposes.
And that's
gets
primarily the
divided.
restaurant inspections?
Yeah, and it's also, they run their Canary Initiative and such through the Environmental Health Department, so they just wanted to clarify, but the state funding, yes, is for it's not a large amount of money, but it took a while to figure out with the state and us and such how to make it flow. So the IGA really, the substantive part of it is the reconstitution of the boards of health. And then the other part of it really deals with just how the funding is going to flow. And so both attorneys' offices have looked at that now, and we're ready to bring that forward. Our thought on the timing was to get the first and second reading done this year so we can reconstitute the Board of Health at the beginning of 2015 and run that full year of 2015 with our reconstituted Board of Health. And we'll be talking about that more in the joint meeting too.
Okay.
And then the last item, which is new, you've not seen, is an intergovernmental agreement with HCPF, the Healthcare Policy and Financing for County Medicaid Incentives. In essence, what this is the, but starting with the federal level and then through the state, there are incentives for meeting certain performance objectives with Medicaid and enrollments, disbursements, what have you. But there are financial incentives basically for meeting outcomes that have been established by the federal government and through HCPF. There's really no downsides, there's no consequences for not meeting them, just upside if you do meet them. This is IGA that's going out statewide between HCPF and other counties. It's just really gone through the vetting process. You may have been familiar with it through CCI. I don't know if they talked about this much.
Not much.
Okay.
I don't think much.
There have really been no objections from any counties statewide that we're aware of to the IGA. Again, it's one that we're trying to get in place before 2015. This is one that took a while to get to us, which is why it's on this agenda without a work session. But again, it is pretty non-controversial from what we can tell. It just provides upside for us to receive Medicaid incentives for reaching certain outcomes. So that will be on the December 3rd agenda also.
Steve?
Go ahead, Rich.
Just while we're on that topic, I've been kind of curious. Last year, there was so much attention given to the rollout and the sign-up of Medicaid, Connect Through Colorado, and we had a special state liaison who helped. And this year, it seems just really kind of quiet out there. And is that because we're assuming a lot of the people who qualified before already know about it and they're going to be able to get on board and just re-up themselves? Or what are we doing for outreach to let folks know that they have this window of opportunity?
Yeah, we have Connect for Out. There's still some advertising and such going on. It's not as robust of an effort, primarily because we had such success last year, particularly on the Medicaid front. We qualified a lot of new people for Medicaid, is I believe almost a fourfold increase for our county. That we feel like we've captured at this point a lot of those eligible folks, and so there is, I still hear ads on the radio and such for the Connect for Health and the open enrollment period that's going on now. But you're right, it has not been as robust an effort.
And when will that open enrollment end? Is that? It's not till January? It's different from our internal open enrollment that was only 2 weeks.
Yeah, no, it's a longer open enrollment period. I don't know that off the top of my head.
I have a feeling it's January, but I think it'd be valuable if maybe we could put a potential flyer together that we could give to the ACRA to do blast facts out to their employers, you know, to how do you reach the employees who may be lower income employees who would qualify, or, I mean, I just want to make sure that we're assisting people. It's been a long, hard battle to get that type of coverage available. It can really help families.
And I think that information is already available through Connect for Health, so maybe we can get them.
Yeah, and
hooked
just
up.
get the
Yeah.
thing from them. But the ACRA has a great blast fax system set up that they can
Yeah.
get information out to all their members, and I think
Okay.
that would just be valuable for folks.
I was just at Farmers Union State meeting over the weekend, and they have a cooperative healthcare plan that they have, and last year was the first year they only signed up about 14,000, and this year they say they anticipate signing up something like 60,000 people will be signing up for that, because I think because it's a cooperative thing, it's a lower cost kind of a health insurance policy, and so I'm anxious to find out, just get more information about it, but I can pass that on to you, and maybe it'll somehow help us for the Valley Health Alliance or something.
Could be, yeah. We'll take a look at it. It's amazing. That's amazing growth in sign up.
Yeah.
Must be doing something right. If there are no other questions or open discussion items from the board, I could go on to the prep for city council.
Yeah, do you have anything else for open discussion, George? So, yeah, let's go to...
Okay. So on December 2nd, we have a joint meeting with the City Council. Right now, there are 2 items that we anticipate being on that agenda. The first is a presentation by the pod members, the nonprofits who are receiving funding. And this is going to be different from what we've done in the past. In the past, we've used this meeting as a funding meeting where the entities would come in to talk about the proposed funding requests for both entities, and there would be discussion. What's different this year is that both the city and county's funding is largely, you have already reviewed the recommendations from the Grant Review Committee for the Healthy Community Fund, and those have been, although not formally approved with our resolution, you've given the nod to include those in our budget resolution. Similarly, the city has already allocated its funding for 2015, which is actually a slight increase over 2014. And so what they've asked for is a joint discussion on a more strategic level, to ask the nonprofits to come in and talk about, so what are the trends and the issues that the nonprofits together are seeing valley-wide, to not necessarily inform this year's budget discussion or what have you, but it is to have a more strategic or bigger picture discussion going forward about, so where are the needs and how is funding being provided. The anticipation is that there will be no budget discussion really at this point, since the funds are already allocated, but really trying to create an opportunity for dialogue between the nonprofits and the elected officials about what are the trends and issues that we might want to have on our radar screen going forward. For us, I think it helps inform discussions and considerations around the Grant Review Committee's recommendations. For the city, they have established, they do a process where they establish top 10 goals each year, and one of their goals is to really look at, again, the human services funding that they provide and how they provide a steady source, and where the needs are and whether there's adequate funding or not. So I think from the city's perspective, this is an opportunity to step back and understand what's happening, what are the issues that exist out there, what are the pressure points, and take more of a strategic look at those issues. So the nonprofits have put the presentation together. It has not been a city or county staff effort, and the pod members, the nonprofits on the pod, will be presenting to both bodies really around issues and trends. My understanding is the city did invite, or the pod invited, representatives from Snowmass Village also, if they wanted to attend and become aware of that information. So we anticipate that the bulk of the joint meeting will really be around that, and again, not a budget discussion. The second item that we've already talked about is looking at that IGA on the health boards again, and if the boards have any questions, concerns, or issues, that we can discuss those jointly. From a staff perspective, I think staff from both the city and the county are satisfied that this is a good agreement that accomplishes what the council and commission set us out to work on. But again, we wanted to have the opportunity for both the board and council to talk about it, particularly since we are taking action one way or another on first reading the next day. And if there is an issue that comes up, you guys have an opportunity to back up on it, or if it's okay, we move forward. So those are the only two items. I do think that's probably going to fill up the time, particularly the pod presentation, as I would imagine by the time they present and there's questions and discussion, that's a good hour and a half.
The only thing I was going to ask, is there a need to have an update discussion with the city council on the status of the library remodel? Or things?
Not to my knowledge. I think that is, we're still working on a construction agreement, and that seems to be moving forward right now.
So no snags?
Not that I'm aware of at this point.
Because there'd just be an opportunity to inform council and provide our input if there was any confusion.
So right now, George, we seem to be moving that forward pretty well.
Good.
So, and we'll be sure to let you know if we run into any roadblocks there.
Rachel?
Yeah, two last questions. Is there any, FYI type of information we should pass along to the council about the airport schedule or the airport projects?
We had an opportunity. We actually did a full presentation to the city council not long ago with the Gantt chart that we presented to you guys, and all the backgrounding. So we spent about an hour and a half actually with council on that already.
Okay.
So I think they're pretty up to speed.
And there's been no changes there. The other thing, and just back to the human services, and I don't want to make this more complicated than it needs to be or anything, and I'm going to be at CCI. But I have to ask the question, is it worth putting together a one-pager that is the services that the county funds that are mandated county services, so that there is that link of separation between the pod type of services that are funded from the Healthy Community Fund and are discretionary? And I mean, is this an opportunity to make that
We've got that prepared if we need it already, because we had done that as part of our original discussions with council. It seems like that is not an issue right now. And I've spent time with Steve Barwick and Barry talking about the nature of this discussion, and
they want it tightly contained.
Really two issues and trends, and they're not even getting into what the county provides or the city provides or Snowmass provides. It's really about a strategic backgrounding. And
okay, well, and along those lines then, though, are the trends that we see in our mandated human services worth presenting separately or as part of this? The child placement in other families or legal, I mean, is any of that germane?
Right now, I think it could be as a follow-up. This was really time for the nonprofits to do their presentation, and so we haven't prepared that as part of the discussion at this point. I do think in terms of considering overall trends in the community, it's germane, because those things oftentimes go hand in hand depending on the nature of the nonprofit, right?
Yeah.
It's very rarely that we uniquely are involved with a family without having nonprofit involvement.
Assist as well.
But I think the discussion has really been with the pod group and having them have an opportunity to talk about their unique issues and challenges.
Okay, I would like to respect how they hope to proceed, what
Yeah.
you've negotiated. It just seems maybe there's a way to simplify that at some point and create a reference point that is there permanently. And I would see it more as a chart that just is an umbrella, and over here is adult protective services, child protective services, all the different range of mandated services that we provide, and over here is all discretionary programs that the community provides through our funding, through city funding, through other contributors and private donations and so on. But it just, there's so much mixing of those two perceptions that it might be worth having an umbrella flyer handout if you need it at that meeting,
Yeah,
rather than
I
trying to
understand.
explain it verbally again.
Yeah.
You know. Okay. That's it?
That's it.
All your open discussions?
That's it for all the open discussions, which leaves us 6 minutes ahead of schedule by my clock.
Yeah, very good. Plus, we've already done the last item on the agenda.
Steve, I'm just wondering if maybe we should persevere through one interview, since this
Yeah,
lovely
and
woman's waiting, and rather than
Was
wait till 3:30.
Marty going to come?
I believe Marty was going to come.
Let's check and see if Marty is.
Yeah, because you're not scheduled till 3:30.
Till
and-
3:30.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be late.
Yeah, I understand.
He came in out of the blizzard.
But, it might be something we
I'm
can
I'm fine waiting, and
do the interview without, but,
thank you, though.
okay.
Marty's phone number.
Well, that's okay. I guess we can take the break. I'm just still feeling a little under the weather. Just trying to-
Let's just take a 15-minute break, and Marty will probably be here a little earlier, and we just give
Yeah, 15-minute break, it will still be a little bit ahead of the agenda, and
Okay.
that'll give Marty a chance to get
We
here.
did get the last item for you guys.
Oh, okay.
Because Okay. We're back now with the Board of County Commissioners meeting on Tuesday, November 25th. And we have 2 citizen board interviews. And the first one is for Sherry Grinnell, who has applied to be an alternate on the Senior Services Council. And Sherry, what we do is, this is just a chance for the board members to ask you some questions and get to know you a little bit better and find out about your history and your interest in the Senior Council. So I'll ask the first question. What is your interest in serving on the Senior Council? Why do you want to be on the Senior Council?
Well, I have an affinity for seniors, having seen my parents through a CCR and all those stages of life, and because they were in a CCR, I've met many people that lived in them and administrated them, and I just have a lot of respect for what goes on at this time of life and what can be done to help people. And I'm officially a senior myself, but would look forward to being involved in a community that of the seniors that I think I have a lot to offer, and I think I could also receive a lot of rewards from it. I've been active in the community, and my background is health and the dental hygiene aspect. And with that, I've done community work to educate young people with a dental fair that's gone on for 15 years. And now that's been handed over to, I guess it's the alliance that's been formed for the dental thing. So, I don't know, I would like to use the time that I have now, being retired, to serve the community, be involved in it, and feel a part of it.
Super.
Thank you.
You're hired.
And I have one comment. I know you said I'm applying for an alternate. I mean, I'm very interested in being full-time, but it was explained to me that there isn't a full-time position and that this is sort of step one. So
There is actually now, we do have a resignation on the council. We do already have one alternate, however, he has expressed a desire, David Siegel, he's expressed the desire to stay as an alternate for the time being. He recently had a baby, and so he still wants to be involved, but doesn't feel he's ready to serve as a regular member yet. So we do have one official opening right now.
Who was it who resigned?
Lori Moore.
Okay. And Lori was coming up to the end of her second term in the spring, I believe, so
think she may have been.
she would have been
Term limited.
rotated out at that point. So I guess would you be interested then in serving as a, they're really pretty much the same. We very rarely have a vote on things where, an official vote on something, and anybody there can participate equally, so.
well, I was hoping that was the case because by coincidence, I took the community communications class that's offered, and Lori was the person sitting next to me, and somehow, the conversation came up, and from me first, and she was, I'm going to retire, so I had my hopes up a little bit that maybe I could step into her chair, or sit in her chair.
Yeah, so often, just because of people's schedules, the alternates end up voting anyhow, if there is a vote.
Okay.
If there's no quorum, and it's important to attend whether you're an alternate or not, because then you're up to speed on the issues to be able to vote
Okay.
when it
Yeah,
happens.
that's good.
So, that sounds
I'm
good.
happy with it.
Do you dine up at the senior center sometimes, and things like that?
I do. Yeah, I enjoyed that, especially in the summer. I sit out there. Everything's, and I do on occasion.
Great.
And I enjoy it.
Very good.
And I've taken a class up there that, oh my gosh, that recent class on memory was just such high quality and so impressive. Really, it's amazing. And,
like
Some of the other fun
the
things.
technical
You like the people?
classes. I like the people, absolutely, and I know a lot of the people, and just from having been in Aspen, I've been here since '89, so. And being a dental hygienist, I feel like I know a lot of people in town.
Well, I would just like to express my thanks for you for applying, and, you know, when reading the resume, I thought, well, this sounds like a perfect fit, and again, thank you for applying.
Okay, great.
Sherry, yeah, thanks for applying. Are you familiar with, or have you been involved with the Picken County's Aging Well initiative that's just been kicked off?
I'm semi-familiar with it. I tend to, that's where they held the meetings and the community participated, and I was able to participate in about half of those meetings. I think there were only a few, but so I was in the beginning.
Okay, good, thanks.
Exposed to that, and I was very impressed with.
Yeah, I think they have a fairly ambitious set of goals that they just kicked off for this next year or two. So I'm not sure how much the senior council becomes involved in part of those goals, or.
Mm-hmm. So far, we've asked the senior council to work on a couple of the goals, both, looking at rebranding and the identity of the senior center, the location of the senior center, some of those things. And there will be other projects as we fully implement the plan that the senior council will be asked to step up and get involved with. Everything from reaching out to our rural communities to things related to healthcare. I know that's an interest of yours, so.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm aware of a lot of the goals that were proposed.
Yeah, good.
And that I'm impressed with, and offered some of my own suggestions on that.
Yeah. Well, a lot of work ahead.
So Sherry, I see that you have a vast experience as a dental hygienist, and are you familiar with the dental program that takes place at the senior center on a periodic basis?
I'm pretty active as a volunteer with Kelly Keith. I'm kind of on call with her, and I volunteered at the last health fair in the dental thing, and I know that there's the mobile dental clinic that goes to the fair, and I'm pretty impressed with that as well, because I know the decline that happens to seniors with their teeth. It's a bit of a passion of mine.
Very good.
Okay. I have to tell a little story for all of our benefit and for the public's benefit on television. When you mentioned working with the seniors at the senior center, even though you yourself are a senior, that reminded me of a story of my mother-in-law, and she was probably about 85 years old at the time, and she used to go down to Heritage Park nursing home in Carbondale to visit the old people there. And she was older than virtually everybody who was already at Heritage. In her spirit, she was just so young at heart, and didn't think of herself as being an elderly person. So she would go to visit the old people. And we always laughed about that. So thank you very much for applying for the position, and we have to have an official resolution at one of our official meetings but we'll let you know within hopefully not too long of a period of time.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
You too.
Okay, next Citizens Board interview. We have Kaylin Gibney. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah.
So Kaylin, you're applying for the Joint Housing Authority Citizen Board. And the joint position requires that you be interviewed and approved by the Board of County Commissioners and also by the Aspen City Council. So have you been before the Aspen City Council?
Almost a month and a half ago.
Okay.
I was interviewed by them.
And I know that there was a day that we were supposed to be interviewing you, and something happened that day and we
I think it was
canceled.
the elections or something.
Yeah, I don't recall, but yeah, we had ended up canceling
That's
that
okay.
one, so we apologize for the delay. So what is your interest in serving on the Joint Housing Authority?
Well, I always enjoy volunteering my time to the community, and housing is something I'm pretty passionate about in the sense that I think it's something that can keep a lot of our young professionals here, as well as maybe encourage some more people to move here in jobs such as the hospital and the school district and some of our younger professional that tend to either live down valley or they stay for 5-10 years and then they move on because they can't find housing that's suitable for them or their needs. So I thought, as someone who has also applied for the housing number of times and now has decided I'd rather be on the board than keep applying for housing, I thought it would be beneficial to have a different perspective and a young voice on the housing committee.
Okay. What type of housing are you in right now?
I'm rent from my employer, which is the Aspen School District, so I live up in Snowmass Village in teacher housing.
Okay. Rachel?
Yeah, for some reason, we didn't kind of get the little formy that we normally get, like for Sherry, in our packet. And it may have to do with the joint process or something like that. We did get your full resume, and it's quite impressive. You know, congratulations on all those activities. I guess what I'm kind of wondering is how much research or grounding do you have in what the Housing Authority Board does?
Well, I've been here for 10 years, and as soon as I was at the 4-year mark, I started applying to, buy housing in the employee housing lottery process. So I do understand the whole lottery process. I've talked to people in the housing office a number of times. And then in the last year or so, I've decided that I'm happy with my current rental situation and would rather be part of the process and see how the entire system works from that aspect rather than continuing to apply.
Okay, well, the Housing Board, as much as anything, administers the guidelines. And so they do a certain amount of review of projects sometimes if they're going to have major housing impacts, but they really don't have a role developing housing so much anymore. And so it can be a really tough seat, when people are trying to make the case that, oh, I really shouldn't have to sell my unit because I really am living here, and you're hearing evidence that they don't really work or live in the community. And that's a tough choice to have to say, we would like to evict you now, because you're not following the guidelines, or other people coming in for waivers. And it's just, are you able to take tough stands?
Yes, definitely.
And get Chalopo back from them and things like that? Okay, because that brings up something just separate, John. I realized I forgot about it when we were doing our open discussion about the joint city meeting, but I read in the paper that the city is doing a request for proposals for someone to verify the housing guidelines type of thing, to kind of review the income categories and this and that. And that felt a little funny to me because it felt like we should be involved in that a little bit more, or at least have this, understand the structure. So maybe that's something you'll want to ask about at that joint meeting coming up. Okay. What's going on with that, and when will we have a chance for input, or how's it being conducted? But they're looking for a private contractor on that. And so, have you read through the guidelines at all?
I have read through the guidelines. I
Okay.
know them pretty well, actually. So I have read through them, and I think there's room for improvement, but I also think that they're pretty good, and it's an amazing program. So I wouldn't be here if there wasn't employee housing. So I do see the benefit of the whole program.
Yeah, certainly. And there occasionally can be conflict areas where we often ask people the question of, how do you feel about the urban growth boundary and affordable housing? Because currently our goals are just that housing should be within that urban growth boundary, even if it's cheaper out here somewhere. It's not so much the community. Do you have impressions about what our housing need is, or how it should be allocated, or who it should go to? Or
I do. I mean, I'd like to take a back seat and learn all of the information before I would make a decision on something, especially when it comes to urban growth, because I know that's a big issue here in Aspen. But of course, I do know and see that the system can be abused. I also know people that would love to be in the system but have never gotten in. And so then they've left and found other jobs in other places in Colorado or elsewhere. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement in that aspect, but I also don't want to jump in and start making decisions without having all the facts or information.
Okay. Thank you. Very good answers.
Hi, thanks for applying. So I just read recently in a paper that the city has several development proposals in front of them for lodging. And some of the asks, one of the asks that the developer is asking of the city is to waive employee housing because of the benefit that they're offering in terms of lower cost lodging. What's your take on that?
I think everything needs to be looked at, first of all. Obviously, we do want some growth and we want to have people come into our town and spend money and help support our community. But at the same time, we also need the people here that are willing to work here, and the people that would work at lodges or some of the lower paying jobs. We do need places for them to live. So I think you have to really look at the cost analysis of, is it good for just growth in the city and economics, or is it going to be able to support workers that actually can then fill the positions that this would create? So I think you really have to be careful on how you look at that and not jump to a conclusion of yes or no right away.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
What subjects do you teach at school?
I teach health, physical education, and exercise science.
Very good.
Thanks. I enjoy it.
So do you coach as well?
I used to coach, but not anymore.
Okay, so the time commitment won't be an obstacle for you?
I just teach from 7:45 to usually 4:30. But, yeah.
Okay. Because I think they meet on Wednesday nights still, Wednesday at 5?
Twice a month.
Twice a month.
Yeah, I was looking at your resume also and thinking with the experiences you've had and someone who can teach high school kids would be able to deal with the other personalities on the housing board.
I'm very patient.
Because it takes, you have to respect the kids, but you have to be tough when you need to be tough, and all those sorts of things would be good skills for serving well on that board. Also, you've done an extensive amount of traveling overseas, and it sounds like some really interesting things that would be enough to fill up part of a meeting some other day, but not today.
I'm happy to talk to you about it another time.
Well, I think you'd make a great appointment. But having young folks is always hard and challenging, and I understand that because often they're working 2 jobs and trying to raise their family or whatever, but I started young. That was one of the first boards I was on, and it really is important.
So just out of curiosity, do you ride the school bus down that comes from the teacher housing?
I try to take RAPTA or the school bus every day if I can. Usually the school bus because it leaves right from our housing area. So.
Okay, I was just curious about that.
I love our public transportation system here.
Yeah, I see the school bus parked there, and I know that that's what maybe it's the main purpose is for getting the staff down to school. Okay, well, thank you, and we'll have to make our official decision at one of our regular board meetings with a resolution. So we'll let you know. And since you've already waited a month and a half since you were interviewed by the city, we'll try to get back to you sooner than later.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cindy, we got ahead of schedule.
So I missed it.
I can go back.
Hi. Nice to meet you. I'm going to come over. I was
Yeah.
had the wrong time on my thing, and I came over almost, but then.
Well, we got started.
We got started 10 minutes early. But.
Steve, do you think we could ask Cindy about the question Rachel raised on the guidelines?
Cindy, we have a question for you since you're here, though.
Yeah, go ahead, Rachel.
I saw the either request for proposals or request for qualifications in the newspaper about the city looking for a consultant to look at the housing categories and the demand side and things like that. And Well, is that generated by the city and the city council, or is that generated by the APSHA board?
The APSHA board.
Okay, and is there any opportunity for input or updating us as to how it's going to happen, or what the goal is, or anything like that?
The goal is to see if our guidelines are in line with the categories. Are the categories correct? Are the incomes correct? Are how we increase the incomes, the sales prices? Are we doing it the right way? Should we be doing it a different way? It's kind of getting information with regards to basically the categories. A long time ago, the categories used to increase by a certain percentage of the AMI.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, years ago, it started going up by 3% of the consumer price index. And that's the same with the sales prices as well. And it used to be done a little bit differently as well. So we just want to know, should we continue that way, or should we go back to AMI, or is there a different way to do it? And are the sales prices in line with the categories and what people are making, so that they can get those loans? So we want to just know that we're on the right track still, or if we need to change something.
Okay. Will you also be looking at, say, the percentages within the workforce who are low income or
Yes.
moderate or things like that, so that it can be greater alignment with the product that's produced?
Exactly. Yeah, that's another thing that we want to look at too. And also with regards to incomes, what should we be counting for income, especially for self-employed people, and assets?
Mm-hmm.
Should we really be counting part of the retirement? Should we be counting more of the retirement? We want answers on that as well. Right now in our product, that 900,000, as you know, is the asset cap. Well, we have a lot of homes that are over $1 million. So that's already pretty much killed those caps. So the $900,000 cap doesn't really make sense. All along, assets have never been increased except for when we added category 5, 6, and 7. They've stayed the same. Does that make sense to do that? So we need answers to that. We're hoping that this study, or whoever we pick, can provide that good information for us to move forward with those guidelines.
And how will they be gathering their information? I guess it's up to the proposers.
We did put information that we want to use tourist towns, seasonal towns as well. And so we want to kind of make sure that they are staying within the realm of what we are. Mm-hmm. But we also want information with regards to what is the poverty level, what's the poverty level up here, things like that as well. So we want solid information so that we can really have a decent categories for the community that we have now, mm-hmm. the people that we have.
Yeah, I think, if I could offer anything, it would be that it would be valuable for whoever is selected to spend a little time talking with Nan Sundin in Health and Human Services, because we are always looking at 200% of poverty level or 500% of poverty level, right. And they have a better grasp of the need that's out there for what are a majority of our jobs in terms of the community. So, great. Okay, I just wanted to make sure it's asking the right questions from the beginning.
Okay. And we're hoping that when we start to pick them, that we have somebody from the county that sits in on the group to decide. We have a housing board member to sit on that group too. So we want to make sure that we have coverage from both entities all around.
Okay, for the selection of the
for the person. Yep.
That's good to know.
Great.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
If I might ask you one more question
Sure.
while you're here, I'm wondering how your new housing office space is working out for you.
It took a little while to get used to because we have, for 3 of our offices, they're sliding glass doors. And during the summer, you have to have them open. It's really noisy. You don't realize how much noise you have from the traffic when you're down below. But I'll tell you, working with housing authorities since 1992 and always being in a basement, it's actually kind of nice to know what the weather's like before you leave at the end of the day. So it really is nice. It's a nice open space. We think people are finding us now. So
Was that a problem at first, having people show up here at our front door and see the little map and then not being able to
right, we still get calls from people, and we try to say, if you know where the limelight is, you should be able to find us. So
But it's a lot better now. We've got pretty good signage out there too. Once they can find that the road that we're on, they can usually find where our building is. So it's turned out pretty nice though. It's expensive, but yeah. Any other questions?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you
very much.
for walking over here.
Yeah,
Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you.
Have a great Thanksgiving, both of you.
You too.
Okay, I don't think we have any other business.
So we just need to bring those appointments up at the next meeting when the rest of the board is here and be able to discuss them?
Talk about them.
Okay. Because I know that next week that won't happen.
Yeah.
It'll be the week after that, and I just don't know if, if maybe we could check with Rob or Michael by email to see if they were comfortable with.
That actually constitutes a meeting, so
Okay, you can't do that.
Yeah, we need
Could
to
we
do that.
maybe do it on the, let's see,
Could we have resolution, well, I guess we won't have a chance to talk about it amongst the larger group.
we could do, is it just a one-time thing, or do we have to do two?
No, just a once reading,
We could do it on the Monday, December 15th, when we're having
then the special meeting.
a special meeting. Or we could do a special meeting on Tuesday, December 9th.
We don't need a special meeting to do this.
No, to pass a resolution to appoint them, to formally
Yeah,
appoint
so
them.
there's
a formal resolution.
We have to have a discussion
Well,
first,
we-
it's
we-
informal.
We can discuss and we can appoint and then, and let them know, then the resolution can follow, right? I mean,
Yeah, or frankly, we could put the resolution on and have the discussion
At
there,
that time.
too. Yeah, I don't think either
Yeah.
of these are going to be.
I just bring it up so it doesn't end up getting kicked to January.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
I think to do it as soon as possible for,
Well, frankly, we've got a majority of the board here that all supported appointment of these individuals, it sounded like, and it sounds like now, and so we could put it on our, maybe not our next regular meeting, since we have some
But maybe that
challenges
special
there, but
meeting.
yeah,
The special meeting makes a lot of sense.
Or the 17th. We have a meeting on the 17th also to certify mill levies,
Okay.
so.
Well, yeah, that's the meeting I guess I was talking about, isn't it?
We have the 15th to approve our budget and to approve our mill levies. And then on the 17th, we have to certify mill levies for all the
Everyone.
political subdivisions in the county.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd just like to do it as soon as possible so
Got
that
it.
the housing office gets that person, particularly for that board, because that's been a vacancy for a while.
I want.
yeah. Okay.
Okay, would you accept a motion to adjourn?
Well, I don't know if we need a motion to adjourn on this.
So you can just announce it.
Yeah, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, grassroots.